Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction Company. I'm taking a look at some of the guns that they're going to be selling in their upcoming December of 2016 premiere auction. And the one we're looking at today is a prototype, experimental, really, self-loading combat rifle. This is an Italian rifle. It is a model of 1939 Armaguerra. Now, like most other countries, Italy was very interested in developing a semi-automatic rifle during the 1930s. They held a whole series of trials. They had submissions from like all the major companies in the industry at the time. And this is ultimately what won out. And what a lot of people don't recognize is this was actually formally adopted by the Italian military before it was canceled, unadopted. But that's less important. So the development of Italian semi-autos really goes back and predates World War I. Factories were experimenting with different ideas. I have, for example, a video out on a Tyranny Arsenal-produced conversion of an 1891 Carcano into a short recoil semi-auto rifle. This kind of coalesced in the early 1930s with some more significant serious work and better guns that were being produced. Beretta, for example, came up with a model 1931 semi-auto that was actually a reasonably decent gun. I also have a video on that, which you can see in the description text below. And then finally, there was a major Italian trial held in 1938. Now, at this point, the Italian military has adopted this new 7.35 millimeter cartridge. They had been concerned about the 6.5 not having enough terminal ballistic effectiveness. So, kind of like the Japanese would do, they decided to step it up to a 7.35 millimeter. They adopted it. They started building Carcano rifles in that caliber, and that is the caliber that they did their testing in 1938. Now, in the 38 test, there were a whole bunch of guns, 8, 10 different designs from all the major companies, Scoti, Breda, Beretta, this rifle, bunch of different companies. And nothing was really satisfactory in the 38 trials. So they came back the next year in 1939 and held a second follow-up trial. So in the 1939 rifle, we had, again, the Armaguerra, not exactly identical to this because it was a 7.35 millimeter gun. A couple rifles from Tyranny, Beretta, again, bunch of different companies. And again, nobody quite met the requirements, strictly speaking, but I guess they really wanted to adopt something. So the testing commission decided that the Armaguerra was the best rifle, and they ordered 10,000 of them. Now, this rifle had been designed by a guy named Gino Ravelli, who was actually the son of Bethel Ravelli, who's a pretty notable name in Italian firearms manufacture. He was responsible for the 1910 Glicenti. He was responsible for the Villa Perosa light machine gun. Cool guy, smart guy. His son apparently kind of took after him. Now, the problem was this had been manufactured by the Armaguerra company, specifically Società Anonima Ravelli Manifattura Armaguerra. Well, they weren't a factory. They were basically just a prototyping design workshop. And so when the Army ordered 10,000, they had no way to produce 10,000 of these rifles. So what they did was they immediately started working on building a rifle factory in Cremona and figured, well, awesome, you know, we've got the order, that'll secure capital, we'll build the factory, produce the rifles, excellent. And that was a great plan until the Army canceled the order. They, in fact, pretty much canceled all 7.35 millimeter cartridge-related things because World War II was starting to get rather more significant at this point, and they realized they didn't have the resources to fully convert the Army to this new cartridge. So they went back to making guns in 6.5. And when that happened, Ravelli and Armaguerra went back and prototyped a version of this rifle back into the 6.5 millimeter cartridge. That's what we have here, is one of the 6.5 millimeter guns. Now, they did manage to make about 100 of these. As of June of 1942, the Italian Army had right about 100 1939 pattern Armaguerra rifles in inventory. And the plan had been to issue these things to kind of spread them across the Army. They were going to put like 3 per squad, kind of the way the French issued out the 1917 automatic rifles in World War I, where you give them to the guys who are really best suited to exploit the benefits of a self-loading rifle. As in comparison, the Germans, for example, when they issued out Sturmgewehrs, they took a different approach where they gave Sturmgewehrs to every man in a unit, and they tried to get these concentrated hard-hitting small units with all Sturmgewehrs, give them the maximum amount of firepower. These, on the other hand, were meant to be issued to individual soldiers who could use them well, and to just kind of increase the effectiveness of all units across the board by a little bit. Now, they were also going to be issued out to specialist units like paratroopers, for example, who needed extra firepower wherever they could get it. At any rate, none of this ever happened because they only managed to make about 100 of them. And ultimately, that rifle factory in Cremona was switched over to manufacture of model 1941 Carcano rifles. And that's what they produced in substantial numbers instead. So mechanically, this is a short recoil gun, and it actually is locked by a tipping block, kind of like a Walther P38. This one's a little iffy. I tried taking it apart, and it's not really happy with me doing that. So we're going to take a closer look at it, but unfortunately, I will not be able to take this one completely apart for you today. We'll start with the rear receiver cover here, where there is a crest on this rifle, although it's pretty light and a little hard to make out. The top there says Semiautomatica, and the bottom is Model 39 Brevetto, or Brevetato, with this Armaguerra crest. Now, some of the other markings, in fact, all the other markings are easier to make out than that. Right behind it there on the cover is Genova, Armaguerra, and then Genova again. And then on the other side, Stabilimento de Cremona 1940. So this is a 1940 production gun. That XVIII is 1940 as done in the fascist calendar dating system. It's the 18th year of the fascist regime. Then, if we look a little farther up on the side of the action itself, we have a serial number, which is A7, and we'll see a number 7 on at least one of the other parts as we look deeper into the rifle, and then a note that this is 6.5 millimeter caliber. One last bit of marking that's on this rifle is this plaque, which is screwed to the buttstock. Pretty sure this wasn't a standard thing for all of these rifles. It makes me suspect this may have been a trials gun or a sample gun that was on display somewhere and liberated at the end of World War II, although that's just a guess. Anyway, it mentions that it's made in Cremona, and it is the semi-automatic rifle model of 1939. Now, one of the things that the Armaguerra rifle has going for it is it's a really sleek design. It's not overly long or overly heavy, and it doesn't really have any protrusions sticking out anywhere. There is no bolt handle. We'll get to that in a moment. First, let's take a look at the controls back here. We have, obviously, the trigger, which, by the way, is kind of long and mushy and not very good. This lever is the bolt release. So when the bolt locks open, you put in a new clip and then snap that, and it will drop the bolt. We have a safety here on the bottom. It's currently in the fire position. Slide that forward into the safe position. That locks the trigger. It also prevents you from opening the bolt. And then this is your manual clip release. So if you want to unload the gun before it's totally empty, you open the bolt, hit that, and it releases the clip, which will then eject with whatever number of cartridges are still in the rifle. I should point out it is 6.5 Carcano caliber, and it does use standard 6.5 Carcano clips. So it's a Mannlicher style clip, meaning it holds 6 rounds. You load the entire thing into the gun as a unit, and when it chambers the last round, the empty clip falls out this hole in the bottom of the magazine. So this rear sight is also actually pretty slick and low profile, but appears to do the job just fine. It's got a reasonably nice V-notch on the back, and then this dial allows you to adjust range 2, 3, 4, or 500 meters. There's a little notch here, so it's currently set to 5. That's 4, 3, and 200. With the 6.5 cartridge, 200 was considered the point-blank 0. Now, one of the cool features here, or stupid, depending on how you look at it, is the charging handle, which is actually the front sling swivel. Now, it's locked in place by this button, so if you're just carrying the rifle around, it doesn't do anything. That's a good thing. However, in order to open the action, you depress that button, and then you can pull the charging handle, or the sling swivel, back like so. There's a slot in the stock there for it to run in, and it is quite stiff. I have put on this, I think this is a piece of an M1 Garand sling, just to give me something to grab onto to operate this. Without the sling on there, you can do it, but it's pretty stiff and tight and difficult. So with that opened up, you can see the inside of the action here. We have a follower, standard Mannlicher type follower for our 6-round clips. You can see the whole gun is a short recoil action. You can get a clue at that by like the wear marks right here on this section where it clearly moves. Up here at the muzzle, we have a pair of rails on the barrel that slide in this front nose cap. So when I cycle this, you can see the action moves back and forth just a little bit. Get that on camera back here as well. That's not quite the full travel, but I don't have good leverage on it right now. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a pivoting locking block in the receiver, and that's what actually locks the bolt into the receiver. It's a short recoil gun, so when you fire, the bolt is locked into this whole barrel and receiver assembly. They're going to come back about ½ an inch here, probably about 10 millimeters. That will run this piece over a cam, which tilts the locking block out of engagement, and at that point the bolt can continue traveling backward to finish the firing cycle. All right, I want to give you one more view of this thing cycling and then a quick word of warning. So I'm going to push the button there. And by the way, this button is really handy to do, because if you grab the sling, the front knuckle of your finger just hits that button very easily. Then we cycle this back. Bolt locks open, non-reciprocating charging handle, of course, there, so that stays in its forward position. Then, when you are ready to cycle the gun, you put a clip in and hit the bolt release. This does nothing as long as the follower is up, because this thing is locked open on the follower. What you have to do is depress the follower, and normally you would do that with a clip of ammunition. Just pushing the follower in doesn't do anything. You push the follower in, lock your clip in, and then you hit this bolt release, and that bolt goes forward really fast. I actually, one of my universal disassembly tools took one for the team here. I used this to push the follower down while depressing the bolt release, and it sheared this thing off. That's why you don't do that the first time with your finger until you know exactly how a gun works, by the way. So we'll give you a quick demo with a big plastic punch that should be able to survive. Push that down. Woo, there we go. Oh. So if you happen to get one of these, don't stick your finger in the action unless and until you really know what you're doing. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Italian self-loading rifles are very rare these days outside of Italy, and it's really cool to see this one. This is the first time I've gotten to take a look at a 1939 Armaguerra. If you are interested in seeing some of its competitors, I have links in the description text below to a variety of other Italian self-loaders that we've had a chance to take a look at. And, of course, if you would like to own this one, unlike most of the other ones I've looked at, this is actually in private hands and coming up for sale. So if you take a look again in the description below, you'll find a link also to Rock Island's catalog page on this rifle. You can take a look at their pictures and their description, place a bid online or over the phone, or come here to the auction and participate in person. Thanks for watching.